Steyn McDowall is Head of Business and Specialist Division at Indwe Risk Services and has more than 30 years experience in the corporate risk environment. Steyn also leads the team at Indwe Risk that is involved with contingent business interruption and business interruption that was central in handling risk resulting from the recent riots in South Africa. Steyn is speaking at the upcoming FIA Virtual Summit happening on 5 October and is very well positioned to talk us through the challenges we face as an industry and how we're going to get past it. Steyn, so the purpose of today's meeting is that you give us a high-level introduction to what you'll be speaking about so that we can entice more people to go and listen to you and to register for the FIA Summit. So it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Rianet. And you know, what a wonderful opening, and thank you for that. There's a good Afrikaans word, dis vleiend. But I must also say, 30 years in the industry, I'm starting to feel really old.
Yeah.
So from the point of view of the summit, and I think something that's very important for us, especially in South Africa, is to talk about pandemic. Talk about it from a risk point of view and also an insurance point of view. And I know everyone said, come and talk to us about pandemic insurance. Well, that's quite easy. It's an uninsured risk at the moment. Yep. It's a systemic risk, uninsured. So will be the beginning and the end of our talk at the summit. So no, I want to talk about systemic risk, but I'd also like to talk about something we call the lure of the law. And I have to leave that with Dr. Anthony Balsamakis, a colleague of mine, because he came up with that. And then I'd also just like to, at the summit, talk a little bit more about risk versus insurance as far as education is concerned. So if I start off, if you like, I can start with the systemic risks. And look, pandemic, yes, systemic. But so is NatCat. You know, natural catastrophes that we have and we are seeing in the world today, only have to turn on any of the news channels to see the wildfires, the tornadoes, the hurricanes that are hitting our world. And, you know, we are not exempt in South Africa. You know, Table Mountain was devastated not that long ago. The Knysna wildfires are fresh in our memories. So these things do hit us. Drought is a big systemic risk for South Africa, and we have to think of these things very carefully. And so also cyber, and that's a little pet of mine, but, you know, pandemic, cyber, and NatCat go together if we're starting to speak about systemic risk, things that can really destroy not only our market, but even countries if we're not very careful. And I think if we are going to talk about insurance, let's think in the realm of pools of insurance or private partnerships, partnerships with government and with different countries. Because a pool like Sasria or a pool like the nuclear pool, we all know that our wordings exclude nuclear risk. We know that, we've always known it, but we put pools together to take care of that. And I think it's about time we start to think of it in that sort of way as well. We must also remember that insurance is a highly, highly complex sector. You know, I can remember everyone always saying, oh, I'm never going to insurance. Well, we're all in insurance. And it's a part of law, and a very complex part of law that make a lot of lawyers a lot of money. Excuse my lawyer friends. But, you know, that just tells us that it is a very, very intricate subject. Just look at CBI, or contingent business interruption, this year, and how much has been spent on law cases, court cases, not only in South Africa, but around the world, you know, to push insurers to pay whether they believe they were claims or not. And I think from that point of view, you know, insurers have reacted, of course, so all of a sudden they push away from it and they avoid it now, instead of, you know, us thinking to innovate around it. And I think innovation is going to be something that we've got to talk about a lot. That new left thread way of thinking about things, you know, and as Joe and I always speak about, let's throw in a little bit of a quote here. Einstein always said, my thinking has brought me to where I am today. It can't take me away from here. And I think that's very powerful, in that if we think we're just going to carry on and carry on and carry on trying to insure things or trying to exclude things under policies, we're going to have a lot of problems. When we speak about risk, and I think we've got to get to the analysis of risk, and then also, you know, the distribution of risk. We need models that are going to assist us as an industry, but also government decision makers in terms of how we're going to look at pandemic risks or shall I say, systemic risks going into the future. Now, these solutions have to be fit for purpose as well. It's not going to help us to just as Peter Olliott, maybe if I can call on someone else to help me here, always says, we're driving around with vehicles and insurance policies that are probably about 50 years old. No one's thought about the automated vehicle and the electric vehicle. What are we going to do about that? So let's forget about the systemic risks. We've got problems in the transport and logistics sectors at the moment, And then I think the other thing is that just think about things like our own local insurance environment. I mean, we've been through some big renewals this year, and capacity is just a problem. Price is a problem. D&O and cyber premiums have increased between 25 to 35%. And that's why we have had restrictions in cover and limit. So not only cover and limit less, the price is going through the roof. And then the last point I'd like to talk to you about is this whole thing, and I'll talk a little bit more about it at the summit, is risk versus education. I think as an industry, we did ourselves an injustice. We start in the industry and we all learn about insurance. So we learn about a policy and what's in that policy and, all that type of stuff. But no one teaches us about risk. I believe that going forward, education must be about risk first, insurance later. And I always go to my old adage, let's identify, let's evaluate, let's look at the controls, and then and only then can we decide to transfer our risk either off balance sheet or to an insurer that is willing to accept that risk. And that's what I'm going to talk about. Also a little bit more about digitalization. I want to talk a little bit more about data and big data. And I really want to speak about incident management, because without those, fundamentally, we will not be able to do the analysis and distribution, which I spoke about earlier.
I'm definitely excited to listen to your talk, Steyn. It seems like you've got a few solutions, hopefully, for us. You touched on natural catastrophes. Going forward, do you think there will be a much higher level of public and private partnerships going forward? And is there anything that we can learn from our international counterparts? I think in terms of a lot of the natural catastrophes, we've been a little bit behind with some of the things we've seen on an international level. So is there anything, we try to do save the whale and don't use plastic, but from an insurance perspective, your views on that?
Yes, and a great question. Thank you very much. Look, yes, I like to follow current affairs quite heavily. So, I know that we've got a whole delegation visiting us in South Africa at the moment in terms of what we're going to do at the next climate change summit that will take place in Paris. And, people are pushing to say they need South Africa to commit with the 12th highest polluter as far as, coal energy production is concerned, and that by the 2030s, they want to see this sort of really big commitments in this disappearing. I listen a lot to the European risk management forums, and they're saying that the pandemic of COVID was handled by governments as a shotgun approach, and they are pushing for very big PPP impacts to take place in Europe, especially. But I'm also looking at what the new Biden administration is sort of saying around climate change and things like that. And I think, from one regime change to another in the United States, you can already see much more sort of interest from the Americas again to push, the climate change summits and things like that. And so it comes down to almost crowdfunding. We've got 8 billion people on the planet. If we don't start to fund this for ourselves, that whole adage of the insurance premiums of the many will pay for the claims of the few. Well, now we've got the claims of the many and we're trying to pay it with the premiums of the many. It's not working anymore. So yes, I do think PPPs or pools of insurance are something of the future. And I do think that, given the type of industry we're in and the innovativeness of that industry, they'll certainly start to happen. I mean, there are some examples already at Lloyd's where they are looking at it, yes.
Yeah. It's I don't just think that people, us on the ground level, not necessarily me, but maybe me, we don't always, I think, realize the massiveness of catastrophes and what the real long-term implications we are heading for. I mean, it's actually scary if you think of it. And it's like you say, as the industry, we can't inevitably fund everything that goes wrong in terms of floods and where is it going to end. It's massive. And education is a passion of mine. It links well to the insurance apprentice. So your comment on And it starts with education. I really agree with and thoroughly enjoy, because I think a lot of things, budgets, a lot of things, there's a lack of education. So if we can also get the younger generation in to do things a little bit different and educate from bottom to top, obviously, it will be fantastic. So I am very excited to listen to your talk, Steyn. Any comment, any other reason why people should attend the FIA Virtual Summit, except for listening to you, of course?
No, I've looked at the program, and I think there's going to be a vast amount of knowledge that's going to be shared at a virtual summit like this. And I do think, that any young person coming into our industry, into this industry, being able to attend these type of summits, very important. Listen, learn, but most importantly, ask questions about what you're listening to. Now, don't just accept everything as being correct. Do your research, and I think coming into this type of a summit with an open mind and contribute. And I think that's the most important thing to get people going as far as our industry is concerned, and why they should come to the summit. We're going to have a lot of fun, Rianet. A lot of fun.
Do you miss the real life networking happening at summits and conferences?
You can see I want to tear my hair. May I answer it like this? I miss the ability to sit down with an insurer and really, really negotiate. Look, it's one thing to do it over Teams, but it's very difficult when you want to sort of see body language and, what are the people doing? And, someone turns the camera off quickly and does a couple of emails in the background, and I only say that probably because I'm guilty of doing exactly the same myself. So I miss that one-on-one interaction. I think just from this, you can also see I'm a little bit of an extrovert.
Yeah.
So when an extrovert is put in a little box at home for over 18 months, whoa, it's not a good place to be, I think my doctor's going to stop giving me scripts for Ritalin soon. Yeah, I think it is very difficult, Rianet. I find it difficult, but we have to cope. And that's also something I'm going to speak about. What do we do for people? Now, I call this the COVID blues. And a lot of people have got the COVID blues. In the past, we used to complain about burnout and getting tired. I think people are overly bored at the moment, just because, that round the coffee cup talks don't happen, and the great ideas aren't being bounced off different people anymore.
100%. I so agree with you. And I think that going forward, we all know that it's a hybrid model going forward, but I think we never have to underestimate the value of that meeting with your team in person, sitting at the office for a day, walking past people that we never now see. I think long term there's going to be a lot of other implications, and companies are really going to have to work hard to work on relationships and spirits and emotional well-being of employees. But that's a whole discussion for another day. I am also an extrovert, and yes, truly miss the conferences and the get-togethers, but we'll make it up on a golf course. So thank you for your time, Steyn. I'm looking forward to your chat, and thank you very much for chatting to me. It was great.
Thank you, Rianet.